Zweig Group invites all AEC industry leaders to the 2024 AEC Small Business and Entrepreneurship Forum, the premier event for small firms in the AEC sector. Experience innovative strategies and insights on May 21st, crafted by Zweig Group's industry experts. Engage in keynotes and interactive sessions focused on recruitment, retention, and business growth. Join Zweig Group for this unique networking opportunity and take your business to new heights. Secure your spot today and be part of the AEC industry's future. Visit zweiggroup.com for more information. The Zweig Group team looks forward to welcoming you.
Welcome to the Zweig Letter Podcast, putting architectural, engineering, planning, and environmental consulting advice and guidance in your ear. Zweig Group's team of experts have spent more than 3 decades elevating the industry by helping AEP and environmental consulting firms thrive. And these podcasts deliver invaluable management, industry, client, marketing, and HR advice directly to you, free of charge. The Zweig Letter Podcasts, elevating the design industry one episode at a time.
Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and I'm excited to be with you today. I've got a great episode in store. One of the goals that I've had with the podcast since I came back was to cajole a lot of the members of Zweig's advisory services group from their different areas of expertise to come on the podcast and talk about what they're seeing in the marketplace. And of course, as you know, 2020 has turned out to be a year unlike any other. And needless to say, there are many adjectives to describe 2020, but we're making the most of it and doing the best that we can. And today, I thought it would be great to bring on 2 individuals that are dear friends of mine, as well as former colleagues and individuals that are doing some pretty amazing things at Zweig Group right now. And that would be Chad Coldiron, who is the Director of Executive Search, as well as the Chief HR Officer at Zweig Group, and then John Bray, who is a member of the Executive Search team, as well as on the M&A team. So John is more of a switch hitter because he serves multiple needs that a lot of our clients have here at Zweig Group. So without further ado, John, Chad, how are you guys doing today?
Doing good, Randy. Thank you for having us. I've just, multiple times on here, but honestly, just getting together with you two for anything, I know it's going to be a good conversation.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm excited. And I got to say, it certainly is good to see and hear you. We talk a lot via text, via email. We just don't see each other the way that we used to. So that's kind of the new norm. I mean, John is based in the Dallas office there, which actually a lot of people still don't realize Zweig Group has a Dallas office, which is huge. I mean, it's one of the Metroplex, as they call it, is one of the larger design firm communities in the country. And just everything is bigger in Texas anyway, right, John?
Hey, I can attest to that for sure. It's thanks for having me on, Randy. Really happy to be here today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we wanted to kind of jump into it. The theme of today's episode is really to talk about recruitment and retention during the pandemic. What is executive search look like, honestly, for design professionals? I know we have a lot of listeners that are key leaders within their organizations. We have a lot of up and coming individuals that are project managers or soon to be project managers, or maybe they're assistant project managers or senior project managers. A lot of people that are tasked with hiring and finding the best and brightest talent to join their firms. And I thought it would be good just to give people at the end of the year, and at the time of recording this, it's right at the beginning of December 2020, to kind of share with individuals, where the market is with regard to recruitment and retention during this pandemic, because as I said earlier, the times are different. So I'll let one of you take a stab at the first go. Chad, why don't you jump in as the long-term expert? I'll give you a little age reference there, and why don't you kind of share what you're seeing, and then we'll piggyback from there.
Well, two things, I guess, about any good recruiter is that we're mostly young at heart and we're pretty flexible. So this year, I think anyone would agree that there were some changes, some things we had to adapt to. But when it comes to challenges for recruiting and retention, those things are always changing. Generations are coming in and out of the workforce that we need to, really adapt towards. And, the pandemic aside, having a set plan and really investing in the recruitment and retention portion of your, business is something that, all firms need to be doing no matter what time it is. We've certainly seen, some changes. John would agree. I think we get less calls, regarding a certain portion of the org chart. Hey, I'm lost on trying to find a 15-year project manager right now. I think those needs are still out there, but a lot of what we are dealing with and the clients that we are dealing with have shifted towards the C-suite or leadership portion of firms. I think that there's multiple reasons for that. One can be really just that older generation really took the year to look back and understand what they've accomplished and what they want to do in the future. Is this a good time to start transitioning some of their ownership? Did this global, health issue, trigger some emotions in people that had been dormant for a long time? I think that answer is yes. John certainly has a little different look at it, getting to work on the M&A side so much. And I think a lot of his conversations kind of cross over. So just interesting to see what he's, just seen on that portion of it.
Great point, Chad. And I could certainly just kind of speak to that just in the sense of, I think a lot of people, those of us who are at the age where they can do so have really seen this year as an eye-opening experience, especially a lot of those senior leaders that do exist within this kind of fragmented industry where there are a lot of small companies. They realize that maybe they do want to spend more time with their families and their friends, or maybe they do want to enjoy their retirement a little bit more. So those kind of triggers are certainly still keeping a lot of those C-suite and director level positions. Firms are still looking for them. The pandemic aside, if you need a new CEO, you need a new CEO. And if there's not someone internally that can kind of step up, a lot of times that's when firms will reach out to us and we can kind of help them still try to adjust to those timelines as they move forward. And just to kind of piggyback on what Chad said a moment ago as well, I think one big reason why a lot of those kind of mid-level, senior project manager, 15 to 20 year experience type of positions aren't really, available the way that they were perhaps in years past is just because firms aren't really thinking about growing these days. They're really just trying to keep their heads above water and make sure they can retain staff. So I would say certainly since March, probably, as Chad mentioned, investing into the retention of their staff has become, all the more important as if it wasn't so important before in an already tight labor market.
Sure.
So.
And, I think a lot of people were surprised at how efficient most employees were when they did get home. And it might have even, tempered some of those growth concerns. Are we going to be able to achieve this? Offices were streamlined a little bit. I think people were just enjoying a little bit of this work style, obviously not good circumstances, but as a whole, I was pretty proud of the industry to see the way they reacted, just looking at some of the surveys that we put out in the middle and towards just recently during the pandemic. But like John said, I think the focus for a lot of firms got pulled away from growth. They want to keep growing, but really that focus had to turn internally to the employees and the experiences that they were going through right now. So 2021, I think, is set up to do well for most firms. I still think the hospitality, airline, retail, those guys will be taking a gut check for the next little while. But, a lot of firms I'm hearing are busier than ever.
Yeah. And it's so funny because it's like you can never quite pinpoint who's going to suffer the most during this period, right? I mean, I think that's the challenge, right? Everybody wants their crystal ball to see who's going to be impacted or affected most. I personally think this is the time, if there was ever a time for a company to double down on really taking care of their employees, now would be that time. More professional development, more mentoring and mentorship programs. Also, this is a good time to take stock of your onboarding problem, which we can talk about down the line. But I just think there are a number of ways, and we used to talk about this, Chad, you probably remember this, about closing the back door. And that the whole idea here is that once you get a good person in, you want to keep them. And I think firms could really take a page from that book in terms of figuring out where is there a draft? Where is the back door open where people are, leaving your firm? Maybe it's in a specific area because you have a senior manager that is not good at handling people. And we are still in a very much a people business. We deliver services, but this is a people business. And without really good people, your business, your ability to serve your client's highest need is impacted. So, I mean, these are all things that I think firms should be thinking about, especially in this marketplace. But if I am hard pressed, and I need to come to you guys to find somebody to add to the C-suite, what type of time frame are we typically looking at right now, with everything else being what it is? I know what things were in the past and the normal time frame that we would give a firm, but what are you telling firms now when they say, hey, Chad, hey, John, what kind of timeline am I looking at to seriously, consider looking at a decent candidate to hire?
Sure. I don't think it's necessarily changed too much. The right candidate, there really shouldn't be the timeline on that. However, I think we've had successful hires, go from, an average of 3 to 6 months working on an executive search, probably to closer to 6, 9 months, 12 months at this point. Not to say that we didn't foresee a lot of those challenges coming, and that really streamlining the process was probably one of the big bumps that we would see in the road with some clients. Honestly, just doing things like having in-person meetings, just that special sauce sometimes can't be there when you're doing a lot of things over video, and maybe you've never met that person before. Me, you, and John, I feel like we can do this because we've all hung out and been around each other. But if it was the first time we were meeting, just going through something like Elevate, a lot of people aren't comfortable just yet. So I think people are getting there. One thing that I would encourage people to really think about is that there are certain positions in that C-suite that are just drastically different. Something like a CFO is going to take much, much shorter time period than something like a CEO. A CFO for a professional services firm is just going to be wired a little bit differently and less in the day-to-day and dedicated operations to the firm. So we've had some good luck with those over the last couple of years as far as helping people out with that quickly. COO during this time, that was a tough one. We had a couple of searches that were really focused on that. And, what we found out was that these operations people that are in that position at their firms were so ingrained on what was actually going on within their own offices during the pandemic that it was hard to get a lot of conversations going there. But, I can say clients were definitely more open to the longer window. We had several people approach us this year that said, hey, this is more of a long-term need that we have in front of us, instead of what we were seeing a little bit more of over the last couple of years, which were, usually second, third question is, how quickly can you get this done for us? I think people are a little bit more understanding and just affording some grace all around at this point.
Yeah. I think we all need a little bit of grace at this point in time with everything that's going around.
That's actually a great point too, because a big reason why we can kind of expect longer timelines on a lot of these is something that I'm sure, the three of us and anyone listening could understand. Is just, it may be more difficult for a candidate to mentally cross the finish line, so to speak, whether that is due to what Chad just mentioned, being so ingrained into the day-to-day operations of their current firm that they really can't fathom, thinking of another opportunity, regardless of how fruitful that may be, versus the ones who there's just so much uncertainty in the world that they feel comfortable at their existing firm and just can't quite get over that hump. So we have definitely seen that play a factor into searches over the past 6 months, especially, and are sure to communicate that with our clients so that, they understand exactly what we're seeing and, why it may take a little bit longer. Sure. And certainly not due to a lack of, effort, right? It's hard to trust somebody when you're talking to them virtually, and you've never met them in person before.
And, I don't necessarily think that the priorities of candidates have drastically changed. People are still wanting good professional career development. They're still wanting good benefits, unique benefits, things that are, flexible. One thing that I've tried to tell quite a few clients lately is, hey, if you don't know what your, flexibility or work from home policy is going to be moving forward into the future, and you're just kind of playing it loose right now, that's a red flag when it comes to recruiting. I need to know what that situation is, as a parent or as somebody who's got other things going on outside of the office. So that's pretty key. But I do think people are more curious. Randy, maybe you can agree. You've been through a couple more big life events like this, but this will probably be one of those drawn out things, but you're going to remember where you were and how you felt during all of this and what were the good things and what were the bad things. So like John said, if you're a firm and you're looking to do something and, invest in your people right now, because they're going to remember, this 12, 18 months a lot more than they're going to remember the last couple of years before this. So if you feel like you've missed an opportunity, the opportunity actually is right now.
Yeah. It's when I think of it, and it's funny you bring that up, just this whole idea of these life events that happen and how they impact us differently. And I remember the savings. I'm a little older than you guys, but I remember the savings and loan crisis. I remember the first recession that we had in the early 90s. I remember the dot-com crash. Of course, the financial meltdown of 2008. I got to say, I would take a good recession right now compared to what this pandemic has done. I mean, just being honest, real talk here. I mean, this has changed fundamentally how we do a lot of stuff. And more importantly, this situation has impacted us. While the financial situation of recessions, they impact you psychologically when you are witnessing people being sick around you or just having to go through this pandemic. I think it does something to you. And so there's a lot of baggage I think we're all carrying around right now and how we're dealing with it. And some are more suited than others to come through this with flying colors. Although I think we're all going to have our, what's the best way we're all going to have our badges to show for how we endured. I was there. I witnessed the pandemic of 20. That's
a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
How did you
exactly. No, I say all that just to kind of give people pause, because I know a lot of younger folks, guys and gals that are your age, people that are on the cusp of being a millennial or in that Gen Z phase, they don't know anything else but this. So for them, it's like, oh my God, this is pretty bad. I don't think it can get any worse than this. So I think, we have nowhere to go but up. And I think that there are a lot of real possibilities moving forward. And so a couple of things I know you guys had told me offline, you said, and we mentioned it earlier, onboarding are some of the biggest issues that clients are currently dealing with. Virtual training, how do they do that? I know Zweig offers virtual training. Mentoring programs, which is something I have been screaming from the mountaintops for years, that, and this industry is not unlike a lot of other mature industries where they've just not invested in mentoring programs, but I think that's going to change. And then ways that, you can kind of get people excited about the work that you're doing. How do you get people to sign on because you've got some great, big projects coming down the line? So, mean, those are my thoughts about where, kind of where things are. Is there anything that I missed as far as what clients are telling you are some of the biggest issues?
No, I think one that I, probably hear the most horror stories about right now is that onboarding experience. I think firms have gotten better as the months have went on, but early on, there were quite a few firms that we'd talk with that either were trying to relocate somebody or whatever it was in the midst of that March, April, June wave of this thing, that it led to some bad experiences and some fallout. And not only that, some people who had, started earlier in the year, those January hires that just weren't ever to buy into the culture, and things seemed like a little hectic, honestly, from day one. So, that's my experience with onboarding. I think some firms have highlighted that problem pretty quickly and realized it was something they needed to fix. But that was one of the early hurdles. Virtual training, we leaned into that pretty hard. Obviously, Zweig Group is out on the road a lot during the year, and a lot of those conferences, speaking engagements, learning engagements they were pushed off or rescheduled or whatever the hell everybody did this year with all the events on their calendars.
Right.
I don't think it was a cancel or hey, we need to move this to another date. It was just, I don't know what to do with this right now. And, I think John probably saw, quite a lot of different conversations come through as far as some of these C-suite needs that we're working on and what people were actually having to concentrate on their own firms now.
Yeah. So I can chime in too. So there was Randy, I actually have a story I can share with you. So we were working on a kind of managing principal type of position in Austin over the course of the past 6 months. And the pandemic played a huge role in this position because it was a satellite office. So the location of the candidate was not that of the leadership team of our client and kind of who was leading that interview process. And the candidate lived at home with her mother, who is kind of obviously a high risk candidate to get infected with COVID. So as we were interviewing this individual, we kind of had to create more opportunities and almost more organic opportunities for her to build rapport with our clients kind of throughout that process, so that when they did kind of inevitably meet in person, we still feel like that is a critical and kind of irreplaceable aspect of the process, unless, there's just kind of dire circumstances. It kind of manufacture those ways for them to build those relationships when that you may not have as much face time, in person with a candidate as you may have otherwise. And as long as a firm leader, you understand the value of building that relationship and understand, why you're doing it, you can make it effective, right? And, we were effective in filling that position in less than 6 months. So that's, it can be done in this time period. But I think really the overarching theme is you have to be willing to go the extra mile, more so than you were before, to build those relationships with each and every candidate. Because, as we were talking about before, it's a little bit more difficult for them to mentally cross the finish line. So you may have to be referring to your second or third option at a certain point if what hits the fan at the 11th hour. So you really need, it kind of exacerbates that need for firm leaders to build relationships throughout every step of the process with every candidate that they have the opportunity to speak with throughout.
John, I'll hop in. And we had a perfect example of that this year. We had a couple of great clients that we were working with. And I'll be honest, one of them was way more open to speaking to candidates than the other. And what types of opportunities, that may have closed off for one client and may continue to open for the other. So, I plan on that person and that firm being fruitful from many of those conversations they had throughout the search process, instead of waiting to speak to that one unicorn that they felt like absolutely fit the mold. We were able to, get to successful positions with both those people. But I can tell you that I think the experience overall is quite different. And it was just because someone was open-minded and they forged relationships with candidates that they knew they weren't going to hire for the position, just for the future.
Yeah. And there's that R word that you both brought up, and that is relationships. And I think it can't be harped on enough that if your approach to recruitment and retention, or specifically recruitment or executive search, is from a transactional standpoint and not a relational one, people are going to smell it out. And if there was ever a time to err on the side of putting things out there from a relational or relationship perspective, now is the time. And we've talked about this. Even when you came into this industry, I told you how important relationships were and are, and how those will seal the deal before anything else will. And, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think it's important to be exhibiting those qualities as a firm leader, as someone that is charged with bringing new people on to the company. Even if you can't bring somebody on right away, don't just cast them aside and say, well, they're no good to me right now. Continue to build and develop that relationship, because you never know what that will lead to down the road.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, Randy, and a great segue. So one of the big questions that a lot of clients have been asking us is, a lot of them are kind of making assumptions, or, I wouldn't say a lot of them, but we get a lot of assumptions that there's low hanging fruit out there. These firms have had layoffs. I'm sure, I know certainly even recently, after the kind of the PPP loan dust settled, there were kind of some more layoffs within some firms. And a lot of leaders are kind of assuming that it will be easier due to the fact that there are folks who need to be hired. They're kind of out there, and they see it as kind of low hanging fruit, right? But what they don't understand, and kind of the folks who are being effective at converting quote unquote low hanging fruit, I really don't love that expression, but it's been used to us a lot.
It's fine.
Yeah. So the ones who are able to kind of convert those opportunities are the ones who have that relationship building mindset. If these individuals are high quality employees and, potential rock stars at your firm, they're going to have options rather quickly into their search for a new position. And if you're not the type of firm leader who keeps one ear low to the ground and builds those relationships and is kind of in tune with the people in that community, that may be an opportunity that passes you by because they've already made a decision by the time, or gotten hired somewhere by the time that they were laid off. So it kind of happens a lot quicker than I think people realize. And it just, again, goes to your point of building relationships throughout the process to be kind of in tune with those opportunities as they arise.
And one thing I'll say, if you're a firm leader, there are going to be some available people out there, and to call them the low hanging fruit, John. Yeah. Maybe try to look beyond some of their work experience, not necessarily, outside of the AEC industry, but someone who's been in that hospitality retail market space, and that's what they've done. That's their bread and butter. Those are still, very viable designers, project managers when it comes to other projects and other market sectors. So definitely, like we've always said, Randy, hire for character, teach for skill, and you'll retain the best employees that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I did want to bring up with you guys, just to see if you could give some feedback or advice in this area, would be what type of investing should design firms continue to do to kind of foster this presence that, hey, we're open for business, we're hiring, we're still, because I think a lot of times people think, well, everything is, you feel like, for a lot of us, we feel like time has kind of stood still. So firms aren't necessarily out there aggressively seeking any new people. Everybody's just kind of waiting to see if the other shoe drops, what's going to happen. Are we getting new stimulus money? We have a new presidential administration coming in. So there's a lot that's in flux. But what would you say to design firm leaders and those that are responsible for continuing to prime that pump, especially when it comes to potentially attracting new talent? What are some of the things that you're telling firms to do right now outside of hire you to find, their next best person? What are some of the things you're telling them to be doing on a regular basis that's going to make a difference?
Well, I think one thing that's clear is that people are spending more time than ever. And I think we've said that year after year in front of their screens, whether or not it's your phone, whether or not it's your computer, iPad, tablet, whatever that is. So, like I said, no matter what, investing in things like your online presence is very important. Things like search engine optimization, pay per click. These are all things that cost some money, but they are worth the investment to expose the general marketplace to your firm in a good way, in a way that you can control. Social media presence, I think it's a great culture builder. Most people, whether or not you're looking to be a friend or you're looking to hire somebody to do some work for you, you go online and you check them out. Some of that content is free. And that's capital R or FREE, free. Anybody can go on and like and share and start a conversation around it. But some of it can be invested in, and you can have some sponsored stuff out there too that's placed quite nicely. So just recognizing, and I think I heard it best a few weeks ago, we went from having 7 offices to we have 85 offices now. And all that means is they've got 85 employees working from home. So just recognizing the technology that everyone needs to efficiently get their work done at home. If that's a monthly stipend for internet, phone, whatever that looks like, I think that's something pretty popular. I know that Zweig Group went ahead and adjusted our policy, right when the pandemic started regarding all of things like that. John, what are you seeing, as things that, they need to be doing?
Yeah, for sure. So, and investing can mean a few different things. It doesn't have to mean money. It can also be time, and a good way to invest your time, I would say, is there's two ways. I would say definitely be revamping your marketing materials regularly. If there's not messaging on there about how you do your job safely and how employees can work at your firm safely and kind of acknowledge all of the things that you're doing to be safe in today's kind of climate, that's very important to show not only potential clients, but candidates as well. You want to stay in front of them with kind of that positive messaging. And that goes hand in hand with, I think, what Chad was mentioning before. And then another thing that you can kind of work on with your marketing team or whatever that may be is just creating fun and new ways to engage not only your employees, but also candidates as well, and being able to talk about those things during the interview process is monumentally important. We've seen creative ideas like, Zoom doodle contests, or, you could play bingo if you wanted to, or, costume contests for Halloween, or, just create ways to engage your employees. And being able, as an executive search consultant, being able to tell a candidate that our client does things like that, it just shows that they care about their employees. And so kind of taking time to invest, your time into creating some, fun ways to engage your employees is not only good for retention, obviously, but it can also be great when you're trying to recruit great talent as well.
Yeah.
And then I guess the last thing I'll say is just kind of, virtual training programs. So I know we've seen in the industry a lot, whether it's, we'll just use, Zweig Group University as an example, as a way, to kind of train your employees virtually. You don't always have the lunch and learns in the office now to give them that professional development that, really every employee in the AEC industry wants. According to our research, it's always kind of the number one indicator for retention is that professional development. So if they can't get that in person, what are you doing to create, programs that allow them to do that in an easy and inventive way virtually as needed? So
yeah, no, I like that. And I think, you guys brought up a bunch of different points that I think are important. One is to definitely make sure that you get ahead of the narrative and you control it from a leadership perspective about where things are going. So like you said, going from one office to 85, I think now more than ever before, it's incumbent upon firms and firm leadership to stay ahead of things, meaning more updates instead of less. So oversharing as opposed to not sharing enough, because I think that will, first of all, put at bay a lot of the peanut gallery when it comes to, people kind of coming up with their own ideas about why so-and-so is doing this or why we're closing down a particular office, and it could be nothing more than a financial measure that a firm is taking. But all of a sudden, if you don't control that narrative, you miss out on an opportunity, A, to connect with your people, but then B, to also keep them abreast of every change that's happening. And one of the things that I have seen from a number of really key leaders in this industry space, and I'll just throw a couple of names out there, like Chris Huckabee from Huckabee. It's a fabulous architecture firm based in Houston, in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm also thinking about Nelson and then Ozzie Nelson, who runs Nelson. And these guys all have, since the pandemic started, they're doing weekly messages, either via email or through video message. There's a lot more internal. I know Chris is doing weekly Zoom lunches with a variety of people in multiple offices. So he'll pull a couple of people from different offices, and it's not like just the leaders. He's pulling in just, mainline folks and just having a conversation with them to check in. And I think that kind of connection goes a long way with easing any fears or concerns that anyone may have, that maybe a firm is going through some financial challenges. And even if you are, I think we're all big boys and girls, and we put on our big boy pants, big girl pants every day. As a leader in the design space, if you're open and transparent about a lot of that stuff, you'd be surprised how the folks react and how people will rally around any cause that you bring up. So, I mean, a lot of what you guys are saying is ringing true now more than ever before. And I think the design firms that are putting it into practice are having a much easier time utilizing that other R word that we talked about earlier, which is retention.
I'm glad to hear you say it because I keep bugging people and putting 15 minutes on their calendar for coffee once a week in the morning for employees randomly. And I usually get a pretty good nugget of something good that needs to be communicated somehow. So, it's good to hear that other stuff is happening, and it's not just me bugging people.
Yeah. And, honestly, I mean, when Chris and Ozzy had told me what they were doing at first, they were like, yeah, it seemed like a lot of work. Now I don't want to stop doing it. Right. So I think there are a lot of things that are going to come out of this pandemic that are going to be really beneficial to our industry. And I think that's one of them. When I lead a 1,300 person firm, what chance do I have of being in front of everybody? It's not really good, but the technology where we are today, I can throw out a video and be on everybody's phone within 20 minutes. And I think we need to be thinking that way. And it's not that you have to put some elaborate production on, but you can go out there and start creating some things that can, keep everybody top of mind with where your mind as a leader of a design firm, what direction you're trying to go. Because I'm telling you, and I know Chad Kleinens loves this, the rising tide lifts all ships. And everybody needs to be part of it. It doesn't need to be a secret. It needs to be something, outside of, obvious things. It needs to be something that everybody can buy into because it's much easier to sell it to everyone when you are being open and transparent with your workforce. So, that's just my thought on the matter. But so again, you guys have shared a lot, and I wanted to kind of bring it back because a lot of people don't realize that Zweig Group does a lot of surveys and publications. You brought up some of the facts and figures. Would you just mind sharing with the audience what surveys are you gleaning a lot of your good quality information from? And I'll be sure to link to those in the show notes here so that people can get access to those or know where they can purchase more in-depth findings from those surveys.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, certainly. And I'll start us off here. I mean, I feel like a really powerful one right now is the best firms to work for survey. Just as we have kind of been beating this drum of retention and doing right by your employees is all the more important now than ever before. So, this survey is a good way for firms to see what the best firms in the industry are doing. Yeah. How do they treat something as simple as maternity or paternity leave, all the way to more complex issues like when do certain people come into the office, and who are they? Who are those individuals? Stuff like that. So it can really provide a lot of kind of context to help you make some of those decisions that we were alluding to before. So best firms to work for.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly. I love that one. I also look a lot at incentive comp and just our general salary survey reports. I was thinking about it earlier. You can literally look up the value of everything. I can tell you the value of the house I'm in right now just by going to, Zillow or something. So, that is something that a lot of people are becoming accustomed to. And it's information that we have and provide out to the industry. But you got to know what is competitive when it comes to that compensation out there these days and what you're competing against. I think that's usually one of the last things on the top 5 list, but people aren't going to lie. Money talks. People want to know what that money is saying and what other people are doing. So just being aware of that. And then, just to piggyback on what John said about the best firms to work for survey, that survey, along with some of the salary surveys are being developed into a new tool. So just be on the lookout for that. It's more of a web-based, Excel-based tool that you would use, and you can get a little bit more microscopic on everything than going through a traditional PDF survey.
Yeah, and I think context matters in this case, right? Because you want to compare apples to apples. You want to be looking at salary data, incentive compensation data, best firm to work for data, industry specific, and I think that's the one thing. Beyond anything else in the 32 plus years that Zweig Group has been around, they have followed and served this niche perfectly. And I can't wait for this new product that you're kind of teasing us with. So that should be exciting when that comes online, because I think there's never been a time to make information readily available, right? Just at the keystroke, as opposed to having to physically pick up a book or read a PDF. I'm all for those, but I kind of like to go to Dr. Google and get my data right away. So we can, we're excited about that.
And I'm looking at it right now. The 2021 Total Comp benchmarking tool is available, and it looks like it's on sale in our store right now. Okay. So if you're out there wondering about that, click on the link that Randy provides, and hopefully that sale's still going on. If it's not, though, you could probably email one of us and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll take good care of you. And again,
if you made it this far in the podcast,
right? yes. If you mention this part of the conversation, then you are a trooper. So we appreciate you listening. But well, man, listen, John and Chad coming to us from Dallas and from Fayetteville. We really appreciate this, and I thank you so much for letting me convince you to sit down with me and have this conversation. It means the world to me. And I think a lot of the information that you guys shared is going to be really valuable for our listeners. That listening tree is growing on a regular basis. And I appreciate each and every person that provides such tremendous feedback about what the Zweig Letter podcast is all about. So I want to thank you. Thank you, John. This is your first time on the podcast. Chad, you've been on several times, but thank you guys both so much for taking time to join us today.
Of course. And if you're out there listening and you want to chat, let John or myself know. And we're always good to put some time on our calendar and just do some networking.
Yeah. And they mean that. So real quickly, John, just drop your email, and Chad, drop your email real quick. And we'll also put that in the show notes so people can connect with you.
Sure. Yeah. My email is ccoldiron@zweiggroup.com. Sure. Or you can just text me if you want. My phone number is 479-200-3538.
Perfect. And John?
Yeah, and I can be found at Bray. That's J, B as in Bravo, RAY at zweiggroup.com. And likewise, I am available on my cell phone at 314-753-0019. Always open to a conversation.
Oh, that's it. They mean that, folks. So definitely please reach out to these guys. They are the future of this industry, as I know a lot of you that are listening to this are. And so we're excited to kind of share them as a resource here on the Zweig Letter podcast. Thanks again, guys. We appreciate you.
Of course.
Thank you.
All right. Well, folks, there you have it. Another episode of the Zweig Letter podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed that. A lot of nuggets of information. Go to the show notes, check it out, get the information that you need, and then reach out to John or Chad. Of course, you can always reach out to me. I'm rwilburn at zweiggroup.com. Yes, they allow me to have an email address, so I will respond to you any way that I can. And anyone that I need to turn you on to at Zweig Group, I'll be more than happy to do that. But we appreciate you, our listening audience. As always, you can get a free copy of the Zweig Letter newsletter. It comes out every Monday morning on PDF. It's available to you. It's available to your team. What I would encourage you to do, if you don't already get a free subscription of the Zweig Letter newsletter, I would encourage you to go to thezweigletter.com and sign up. And you can also send in an Excel spreadsheet if you want to sign up your whole company. We've had 200-300 people be added to the roles at a time. And that way you're able to get what I would say is the best and one of the most longest running newsletters in the design industry space. You can hear from people like John and Chad who write articles in the newsletter. So many of your peers that are writing articles in this newsletter. And of course, Mark Zweig and Chad Kleinens and Jamie Claire Kaiser and the rest of the advisory team at Zweig Group. There's so much great information available. Let's, as we move forward, as we continue to develop the AEC space, let's continue to educate each other and encourage and build each other up. And as, again, that quote that we like using quite a bit, a rising tide lifts all ships. So come be a part of this rising tide here at Zweig Group. But that's all I have for you today. As always, you can listen to Zweig Group wherever great podcasts can be found. Just subscribe to it. The Zweig Letter podcast comes out about every 2 weeks or so on a Thursday. And I got to say, it's some of the best listening that you're going to find for the design industry space. We have thousands of people that download this podcast on a regular basis. And I got to tell you from the bottom of my heart, I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you ever need anything, always reach out. We are here to serve. That's all I have for you this week, but I will see you soon. Peace.
Thanks for tuning in to the Zweig Letter Podcast. We hope that you can be part of elevating the industry and that you can apply our advice and information to your daily professional life. For a free digital subscription to the Zweig Letter, please visit thezweigletter.com/subscribe to gain more wisdom and inspiration, in addition to information about leadership, finance, HR, and marketing your firm. Subscribe today.